up your sleeves, Hollywood, because you're all getting flu shot!
Ka! It's you!
Yes, man cub. So nice to see you again.
Oh, go away. Leave me alone.
Let me look at you. You don't want me to look at you? Then you look at me.
No, sir. I know what you're trying to do, Ka.
You do? You don't trust me.
No.
Then there's nothing I can do to help.
You want to help me?
Certainly.
Listen to our government agencies. These guys are telling the truth.
Just one time, forget the conspiracy. Listen to our government agencies. These guys are telling the truth. You know, there's no conspiracy here, folks. Just get your damn vaccine.
Trust in me and just in me. Shut your eyes and trust in me.
In Israel, the public health system is unable to keep up with a severe flu outbreak. Already 11 deaths this year. Hours-long lines for vaccines there simply aren't enough of. Gloom and doom newspaper headlines and panic setting in. It's not a situation unique to Israel. The influenza virus is one of the deadliest killers on Earth.
How many people died from a violent death in 2016? 500,000. And you know how many people died from the flu? 650,000.
Every year, 1 in 5 people will catch the virus. 1.5 billion people around the world, and there's nothing to prevent it.
One of the particularities of the flu virus is that it undergoes unpredictable and continuous mutations. Nobody can know what will be the next flu strain.
The problem with a vaccine is that the flu virus changes so fast, any vaccine is outdated by the time it comes to market. But researchers at Weizmann Institute have spent 25 years developing a new method.
What we want to do is to change the focus of the immune system. We want to expose it to the core region of the virus and teach it, look, this is what you have to look for.
But here's the thing, the flu virus might mutate too rapidly for traditional vaccines, but every single influenza virus has the same structure underneath.
Virus is a very basic structure. It is like a capsule with made of proteins and some genetic information inside. The flu virus contains only 8 proteins, that's all.
If the immune system can recognize those 8 proteins as a threat, they can kill the flu while it's in its vulnerable division and replication stage. And because all flu has the same 8 proteins, any flu is vulnerable.
To give it to at least 70% of the population, by that you can create a herd immunity. So yes, our vision is that we can eliminate or lower significantly the burden of the flu.
They currently have 12,500 people enrolled in stage 3 clinical trials, and they expect the FDA will greenlight mass production by the end of 2021.
I started my work with mice in the lab, just sitting by the computer and thinking about which sequence to use in this vaccine, and now we have more than 12,000 people getting this vaccine. We can save the world from influenza.
Trust in me and just in me. Shut your eyes and trust in me.
Well, a lot of Americans very concerned about the impact of this drug, which is found in vaccines, and how it causes autism. Talk about that.
Thimerosal is a preservative that was put in vaccines back in the 1930s. Almost immediately after it was put in, autism cases began to appear. Autism had never been known before. It was unknown to science. Then the vaccines were increased in 1989 by the CDC and by a couple of other government agencies.
Okay, let me stop you there. That's an important date, and I'll tell you why. My son, born in 1991, has a slight form of autism called Asperger's. But it seems, and again, when I was practicing law, and also when I was in Congress, parents would constantly come to me, and they'd bring me videotapes of their children, and they were all around the age of my son or younger.
I want to get serious for a minute, if I could, because I've been hearing a lot of talk lately, and I don't know if this is more prevalent in L.A. than other places, but I feel like it probably is, but there's a small but still sizable group of people who are choosing not to vaccinate their children. Here in L.A., there are schools in which 20% of the students aren't vaccinated because parents here are more scared of gluten than they are of smallpox.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has declared this year's flu outbreak to be the worst on record since swine flu in 2009.
I want to say something about that. I know if you're one of these anti-vaccine people, you probably aren't going to take medical advice from a talk show host, and I don't expect you to. I wouldn't either. But I would expect you to take medical advice from almost every doctor in the world. See, the thing about doctors is they didn't learn about the human body from their friend's Facebook page. They went to medical school where they studied all sorts of amazing things, like how to magically prevent children from contracting horrible diseases.
Of all the things that are out there, what could cause an excess in a single year of 10 million deaths? Now, clearly a big war could, and a pandemic, natural or created by bioterror.
Of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. Not missiles, but microbes. There was no one there to look at treatment approaches. No one to look at the diagnostics, no one to figure out what tools should be used. As an example, we could have taken the blood of survivors, processed it, and put that plasma back in people to protect them. But that was never tried. So there was a lot that was missing, and these things are really a global failure. The WHO is funded to monitor epidemics, but not to do these things I talked about. Now in the movies, it's quite different. There's a group of handsome epidemiologists ready to go. They move in, they save the day, but that's just pure Hollywood. Now in the movies, it's quite different. There's a group of handsome epidemiologists ready to go. They move in, they save the day, but that's just pure Hollywood.
시민들의 불안 심리를 잠재우기는 쉽지 않아 보입니다. 모든 병원에서 유사환자가 접수됐답니다. 후반 며칠 전쯤입니다. 사망한 주병의 증상과 완전히 일치합니다.
사망자 수는 기하급수적으로 늘어날 것으로 예상됩니다. 당장 폐쇄해야 합니다.
엄마한테 데려다 줄게. 저는 지금 꼭 안으로 들어가야 됩니다.
감기에 걸리면 푹 쉬는 게 좋아. 조심하게.
목숨을 잃고 삶의 터전이 파괴된 것에 대해 큰 책임을 느낍니다. 저는 분당 내에서 발생한 신종 조류독감 사태를 조속히 해결하기 위해 모든 노력을 기울일 것임을 국민 여러분 앞에 약속드립니다. 고립되어 있는 분당 시민 여러분, 조금만 더 참고 견뎌주십시오.
Our China correspondent, John Sutherland. In some cities, those suspected of being sick are being rounded up, with multiple unverified videos showing the quarantine squads at work.
큰 책임을 집니다. 저는 분당 내에서 발생한 신종 조류독감 사태를 조속히 해결하기 위해 모든 노력을 기울일 것임을 국민 여러분 앞에 약속드립니다. 고립되어 있는 분당 시민 여러분, 조금만 더 참고 견뎌주십시오.
This particularly nasty flu season falls on the 100th anniversary of the biggest flu pandemic in history. The 1918 outbreak is estimated to have killed between 20 and 50 million people worldwide. A reminder that one of the world's most common diseases is also one of its deadliest.
There is a $10,000 reward for information about the mysterious disappearance of a CDC scientist. Timothy Cunningham is an epidemiologist in Atlanta and has been missing for more than 2 weeks.
He left work early on February 12th saying he felt sick. Omar Villafranca has more on the search to find him.
Investigators returned to the woods around Timothy Cunningham's house Monday, searching for more clues.
I'm not so sure what else we can do with that area.
His family found his wallet, his car, even his beloved dog, all left behind in his Atlanta home.
Timothy has been unaccounted for since the 12th.
Cunningham's father, Terrell, drove from Maryland to Georgia after not hearing from his son for 2 days. His parents and other family members have been putting up missing posters throughout Cunningham's neighborhood, and they're trying to get the word out about his disappearance through the media.
He has such a history of being so responsible and dependable that I think that is what puts us all in at such disbelief.
Cunningham graduated from Morehouse College and earned advanced degrees from Harvard. The 35-year-old CDC scientist reportedly lived alone. His next-door neighbor, Viviana Torrey, says Cunningham said something odd to her husband the day he disappeared.
He told my husband to tell his wife, me, to erase his cell phone number from my cell phone.
The mystery begins with this report that came out weeks before Dr. Cunningham went missing. Disastrous flu shot is causing deadly flu outbreak. A CDC doctor has warned this year's disastrous flu shot may be responsible for the deadly flu epidemic sweeping the country. Some of the patients I've administered the flu to this year have died, the doctor said, adding, "I don't care who you are, this scares the crap out of me." We have seen people dying across the country of the flu, and one thing nearly all of them have in common is they got the flu shot.
Trust in me. What happened was the vaccine schedule was increased. We went up from receiving about 10 vaccines in our generation to these kids received 24 vaccines. And they all had this thimerosal in them, this mercury, and nobody bothered to do an analysis of what the cumulative impact of all that mercury was doing to kids. As it turns out, we are injecting our children with 400 times the amount of mercury that FDA or EPA considers safe. A child on his first day that he's born is injected with a hepatitis B shot. Under EPA guidelines, he would have to be 275 pounds to safely absorb that shot.
Have you gotten your flu shot, anybody? Yeah? You can literally get them anywhere now. You can get a flu shot at the mall. I think that's the same lady from Claire's with the ear piercing gun.
Some people do not buy into that because they did a Google search and Jenny McCarthy popped up and she had clothes on, so they listened to what she had to say and decided not to vaccinate their kids. Now, and by the way, I want to say, this would all be okay if your kids were the only ones affected. They're your kids, but they're not, because unvaccinated kids put all children in danger, especially babies who are too young to get the vaccination shot. But of course, that's according to doctors, so, you know, take that with a grain of salt.
Flu season generally runs from October until April and peaks between December and February. Last year, the flu claimed the lives of more than 80,000 Americans, including 185 children. That's a record number. Our Dr. John LaPook is here with what you can do to protect yourself and your family. John, good morning. Good morning. I know you're going to scold me later in this segment as I acknowledge that I have not gotten a flu shot.
Inform, not scold. We discuss.
But before we get to the information on my personal situation, how effective is the flu vaccine this year?
You know, it seems like it's a pretty good match. Last year was around 40% effective, and people say, well, that's not 100%, but it's better than nothing. And even if you do go ahead and get the flu, it can make that flu less deadly.
In 1988, 1 in every 2,500 American children had autism. Today, 1 in every 166 children have autism, and plus 1 in 6 children have other kinds of learning disorders, other kinds of neurological disorders, speech delay, language disorders, ADD, hyperactivity, that all seem to be connected, that are all connected, the science shows are all connected to autism.
But in this case, you've got the federal government coming in saying, well, there's no good science. And of course, in politics, science always gets diluted. Why hasn't the federal government stepped up and worked more? Because listen, Bobby, I can't prove it tonight. You can't prove it, but intuitively, you look at the spike, you look at what happened with the thimerosal, there is no doubt in my mind, maybe it's 2 years from now, maybe it's 5 years from now, maybe it's 10 years from now, we're going to find out that the thimerosal causes, in my opinion, autism.
You know, see, now there's a type of foreign assistance for vaccines or for AIDS treatment that are incredibly effective. These are all about saving lives. And the good news is that as you make those breakthroughs, the population growth in the country goes down. These are all about saving lives. The population growth in the country goes down. The good news is the population growth in the country goes down. Vaccines or for AIDS treatment that are incredibly effective. These are all about saving lives. And the good news is that as you make those breakthroughs, the population growth in the country goes down. These are all about saving lives. The population growth in the country goes down. The good news is the population growth in the country goes down. If we look at the 20th century and we look at the death chart of the 20th century, I think everybody would say, oh yeah, there must be a spike for World War I. You know, sure enough, there it is, like 25 million. And there must be a big spike for World War II, and there it is, it's like 65 million. But then you'll see this other spike that is as large as World War II right after World War I. And most people, a lot of people would say, well, what? What was that? There's two kinds of flus. There's flus that spread between humans very effectively, and there's flus that kill lots of people. And those two properties have only been combined into a widespread flu once in history. Well, that is Spanish flu. We have no idea where it came from. It's called the Spanish flu because the Spanish press was the freest. They were the first to talk openly about it. And so in the annals of epidemic history, that's the big event. I funded a disease modeling group that uses computer simulation, and that work has been phenomenal in helping us target our polio eradication resources and which parts of Nigeria should we work harder on. And it's very natural if you have a group like that to say, hey, look at something like the Spanish flu in the modern day. Health systems are far better. And so you think, hey, that wouldn't be very bad. Well, we tried it, and there are some assumptions we had to make. But what we showed is that the force of infection because of modern transport, which compared to 1918 is over 50 times as great. And so if you get something like a flu, and you look at that map of how within days, it's basically in all urban centers of the entire globe, that is very eye-opening. That didn't happen with Spanish flu in the past. The opportunity to do more than just let it run its course is really only in the last decade. Basically, when you talk about drugs, you can talk about small molecules or talk about these complex biological protein-like things, of which there's a subclass called antibodies. Antibodies are the molecules that the immune system naturally builds to attack disease. Today, the idea that somebody says, oh, here's an antibody, make a lot of it, make it very quickly, that's right on the cutting edge. And the Ebola epidemic showed me that we're not ready for a serious epidemic, an epidemic that would be more infectious and would spread faster than Ebola did. This is the greatest risk of a huge tragedy. This is the most likely thing by far to kill over 10 million excess people in a year. We don't need to invest nearly what we do in military preparedness. This is something where less than $1 billion a year on R&D, medical surveillance, standby personnel, cross-training the military so they can play a role in terms of all the logistics here. This can be done, and we may not get many more warnings like this one to say, okay, it's a pretty modest investment to avoid something that really, in terms of the human condition, would be a gigantic setback.
My life would be much easier if I just said, let China continue to rip off the United States, all right? It'd be much easier, but I can't do that. Somebody had to do it. I am the chosen one. Somebody had to do it, so I'm taking on China.
This isn't just made up stuff, folks. These are facts. And now the coronavirus, COVID-19, has been manufactured since 1981 to implement medical martial law. That seems to be where they're heading with all this. And on a sidebar, did you notice that Kobe Bryant was to be buried in Corona Del Mar?
Please don't tell the supervisor I have the flu. I've been working with a shattered pelvis for 3 weeks. Oh, my juice loosener's never gonna come.
Hey Dad, this came for you in the mail. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. What the?
I'd like to call to order this secret conclave of America's media empires. We are here to come up with the next phony baloney crisis to put Americans back where they belong, in dark rooms glued to their televisions, too terrified to skip the commercials.
Well, I think...
NBC, you are here to listen and not speak. I think we should go with a good old-fashioned public health scare.
A new disease. No one's immune. It's like the summer of the shark, except instead of a shark, it's an epidemic. And instead of summer, it's all the time.
That is smoking.
Now, I hate to be the guy who derails what everybody else loves.
He loves being that guy.
But, Janice, we do have standards. This can't be a made-up disease. The only moral thing to do is release a deadly virus into the general public.
We do have something we've been holding on to, but it hasn't been tested. Get over here, NBC.
Well, we certainly believe in testing, but Wow. Oh, yeah.
So, we've got our deadly disease. Now, we just have to blame it on something that's in every household, something that people are a little bit afraid of already. House cat flu is coming, people. The Center for Disease Disinformation predicts with some degree of probability that the house cat flu might spread in the following hypothetical outbreak pattern. So, petter beware, that warm body on your lap just might be ready to destroy your
Behold, the Georgia Guidestones. These granite monoliths mysteriously appeared about 40 years ago. And if you're thinking aliens or a cult or even the 10 Commandments, well, you're not the only one. Just ask this guy.
And you take pictures of it, you get a blue orb. When you put your head down in there like this and look through it, a ball of energy comes through that sucker, man.
Things at this southern Stonehenge are about to get totally weird. These granite slabs are on a farm outside of Atlanta, and no one knows exactly what they're doing here.
In future generations, they'll wonder, who put those stones there? Why did they put those stones there?
Hudson Cohn was here from the beginning, 1979. He took these photos as the Guidestones went up, 19 feet high, 250,000 pounds, and built to withstand an earthquake. The 4 slabs of granite each have 10 guiding principles of truth and harmony. They're inscribed in English, Russian, Chinese, Arabic. The list of languages goes on. But what does it all mean?
I've had people some and say it was some kind of Satan worship shrine and it ought to be torn down. And
The 4 slabs of granite each have 10 guiding principles of truth and harmony.
After the T-virus was released, a secret file was uploaded to my data stream. It was a recording of a meeting of the Umbrella High Command, dated 17 months before the viral outbreak occurred.
We're here today, not just to talk about the future of this company. We're here to talk about its destiny. We're here to talk about the end of the world. We stand on the brink of Armageddon, diseases for which we have no cure. Fundamentalist states who call for our destruction, nuclear powers over which we have no control. And even if we navigate these dangerous waters, we face other, even more inevitable threats. Global warming will melt the polar ice caps within 80 years, flooding 90% of all habitable areas on Earth. Unchecked population growth will overtake food production in less than 50 years, leading to famine and war. This is not conjecture. This is fact. One way or another, our world is coming to an end. Now the question is, will we end with it?
What do you propose?
I propose that we end the world, but on our terms. An orchestrated apocalypse. One that will cleanse the earth of its population but leave its infrastructure and resources intact. It's been done once before, with great success. The chosen few will ride out the storm, not in an ark as in the book of Genesis, but in safety, underground.
So anyway, so all these articles are on the news. So if you guys want to have some fun, get on Google and start Googling these things. I'm going to read some of these articles. I want you to look at them. If you don't think that he's worried about that, look at this article. It says, Bill Gates and America's millionaires are building underground survival bunkers. Here's another one. How scared should I be? A contagious disease will wipe out humanity. Here's another one. Billionaires are preparing for the apocalypse. Do they know something you don't know? Another one. Bill Gates fears plague that could wipe out humanity. Here's another one. Bill Gates thinks that coming disease could wipe out or could kill 30 million people within 6 months and says we should prepare for it as we do war.
And just how do you intend to achieve this?
The means of our salvation are already at hand. I give to you the T-virus.
Just walked right past them. He walked right past them. Like there was nobody.
Leaving Microsoft, Bill Gates bought $23 million of Monsanto shares. Globally, he now promotes GMOs and a vaccines collection he calls the solution for the world. Gates has been recorded explaining this solution is actually to cut the world's population.
None of this is accidental. To those who are aware of the New World Order and of the Illuminati elite who run our world system, we know that they use the Hegelian dialectic of thesis, antithesis, and solution to bring about their desired changes upon society in ways which would seem natural and without suspicion to the ignorant and unobservant eye. In 1968, the Club of Rome met at Rockefeller's private estate in Bellagio, Italy. This think tank's job was to invent a crisis which would have a programmed response, to which they would then offer their pre-planned and long-awaited solution. This is how they bring order out of chaos, or as they love to call it, ordo ab chaos. Their purpose was to find a way to unite humanity in a common cause, and the catalyst for this unity would need to be an artificially created disaster, the plan for sustainable development and the remedy for overpopulation. Voluntary sterilization, abortion, and euthanasia are culling means they hope people will, through re-education and brainwashing, choose for themselves. Vaccinations, weather modification, 5G and frequency technologies are a part of this hidden, nefarious plan of silent weapons warfare on the people of this earth. People will be moved from rural areas to large, smart cities for the sake of better control and monitoring. Urban life will be sold as green and eco-friendly, and fires and droughts and hurricanes will force people to make this move voluntarily. If I were reincarnated, I would wish to be returned to Earth as a killer virus to lower human population levels.
Robert Kennedy Jr., you know what he says? His family started Special Olympics. There were no autistic kids. He says that where the 40-year-olds wearing diapers with helmets on at the mall, if you misdiagnose them, if you miss them, because you say they're not vaccines, that they missed them. Where were the special ed classes when people with my generation, there weren't any, because they didn't exist. That's what he says. Do you know, and it's truth, but you know what's going to happen? I have a 10-year-old grandson, and I don't care what you say, that the autism and vaccines don't exist. It does, because I watched a perfectly healthy, beautiful 2-year-old get those shots and become a severe autistic child. And guess what? He will be 40, walking in the mall with a diaper on and a helmet. Thank you for the studies that you don't do.
Listen to our government agencies. These guys are telling the truth.
Just one time, forget the conspiracy. Listen to our government agencies. These guys are telling the truth. You know, there's no conspiracy here, folks. Just get your damn vaccine.